Good morning guys, welcome to TMX Adventures. Lisa here. Hey, today we're going to make a gluten-free artisan bread. Now this recipe is phenomenal. It is on your Cookidoo. We make it all the time. We can turn it into pizzas. We do all sorts of things with this loaf. It is the closest thing that I have found to a white bread that isn't glutinous, okay? So I know some of you have been waiting for this video, so here it is. And I'm going to show you today how to make it a little bit fancy as well. So come with me, let's do this together. Start cooking. By the way, if you're watching on, remember to say hi, engage in some way so that you get these in your future updates. And if you're watching the replay on YouTube tonight, welcome. Please hit subscribe. First things first is 80 grams of almonds. Now you can use almonds. I find it makes it a little bit thicker of a loaf. It feels a bit more dense. It's a feel, it's not necessarily a taste or anything. We like to use cashews. If you can't do cashews because you're sending it to a nut-free workplace or school, use sunflower seeds. It will work out exactly the same, taste exactly the same. First things first, let's mill this down. It does have a very long mill time, and even when I was doing an almond-based one initially, 1 minute was too long. You nearly got paste. So we're just going to do that for 10 seconds. So that's all we need to make. Okay, 10 seconds is all you need, all right? And it said line a tray. Now you can use a tray. I quite like to do this a bit of a free form. It is different to the picture, and the cooking steps is different to the picture. But what I've done is I've greased a silicone loaf or something that I can use as a mold. And I'll show you more about that at the end and how to do this fancy kind of loaf. Line a large baking tray with baking paper. Don't worry about that if you're doing it my way. Scrape down the sides with a spatula. See, look. Cashew flour. How cool is that? How awesome is our Thermomix? Oh gosh. How do people live without a Thermomix? Okay, yeast. 2 teaspoons dried instant yeast. Okay, so in this goes. Try and do it. You might notice I'm putting it around the blade so that it's not sitting on top of that little, oh, I lost the lid, on top of that little shafty bit, and then it doesn't get used in our food. Don't want anything to go to waste. Gluten-free flour. Thank goodness for modern gluten-free flour, right? Like, how good is it? So 400 grams, it's quite a bit. Now I have used self-raising flour when I've run out. Like the other week at the shops, we purely could not get a plain flour. And there was only self-raising flour. So we used the self-raising, and I skipped out the baking powder later. It still worked. It was a little fluffy and the top kind of split. It didn't matter, all right? It still worked perfectly for sandwiches. So it just looked funky. Tasted fine, texture was fine. It just did this weird like split. So, all right. I wouldn't do it all the time, but as that once off, it was fine. 60 grams of olive oil. Okay, so in this goes, or whichever oil you preference. Okay, there we go. Next, we've got, now this is my second swap, right? Because the first one was the nuts. Sparkling mineral water. Just wait for that. There's no need. Okay, just water. Water has the same sort of outcome that I've noticed. So why bother with the sparkling? So just put in 300 grams of water. It still makes the most amazing fluffy loaf. I tried to do some research as to why that would be important, and I really couldn't come up with much that seemed significant enough to actually go, you know what, it makes a difference. And honestly, I'm incredibly impressed with how fluffy and light and amazing this works out. I forgot to grab the eggs. Hang on 1 second while I come down here and get under the camera for a sec. Grab a couple of eggs off the egg rack. 2 large eggs, okay. In they go. 1, 2. There we go. Didn't get you any colourful ones to show you this morning. Just reach for the closest ones. Actually, the colourful ones tend to be the smaller eggs. Okay, 1 tablespoon of sugar. Feed that yeast. I'm not going to put a full tablespoon. I'll probably just put about a teaspoon in. Just helps that grow. Now, xanthan gum. We need to talk about xanthan gum. Xanthan gum is a thickener used in gluten-free cooking. The time you leave it out of a recipe, your batter will be like pancake batter as opposed to cake-like batter, where it's got its own strength and texture to it, okay? It doesn't then create a fluffy product in the oven. Trust me, I've tried. So many years ago, we only had available to us on well, not only available, the only recipe that was going around for gluten-free bread was called the Chia and Pepita gluten-free loaf. And I think it was based off Cindy O'Meara's book. Now, I was going to a demo one day with a gluten-free friend coming along, and I thought I will pre-make the loaf and take it. It takes too long to rise. Okay, it really needs a good hour, 2-hour rise. So it's no good for a demo to actually show it a demo. Anyway, so of course I forgot the xanthan gum. Didn't realize I forgot. And I was like, why has this not risen? And I took it along and I'm like, this is so incredibly dense. And then I had that aha moment. And that was the difference. And I remember pouring it out thinking, oh, this is really soft today. I wonder why it's like pancake batter and not so textured. It's literally like a cake. You know, when you've got it right, you kind of, the top of the cake, you're flattening it yourself, that sort of feel to it. Anyway, so xanthan gum's important. Sometimes you can get away with using, where you can use gar gum. It works the same way. It's a thickening product. Okay, so, and it is actually already in most plain flours these days, and most recipes for gluten-free flour if you want to make your own. Now it says 1 tablespoon. This is not 1 tablespoon. I'm using a teaspoon to scoop. I'm actually going to have to buy some more soon. I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel. By the way, 4 teaspoons equals a tablespoon, so I'm kind of just approximating. I buy this, I'm going to put it on my to-dos because I'm about to place one of my orders with the bulk people I buy through, and I buy it and it lasts us 5 years. Well, I've had this going for a very, 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 very long time. So it's one of those things that you just put a little bit into, like, the recipes that call for it. So it's not like it's a thing you go through, like you go through this all the time, yeah? And this actually has, I think, usually xanthan gum in it. Yeah, xanthan gum, thickener. Gluten-free starches, maize, tapioca, gluten-free flours, rice and maize, rice bran thickener, xanthan gum. So it is the thickener in there. Okay, next, gluten-free baking powder. This gives it a bit more fluff, a bit more air into it. 1.5 teaspoons. If you're ever confused, remember teaspoon has the S as the second letter. Tablespoon has the B as the second letter. Uh-oh, that was bicarb. Come back, bicarb. That's not what I'm supposed to be putting in you. Bicarb has a really unusual taste if you put too much into a recipe. Has anyone ever done that? My kids have. I'm just going to scoop that out, guys, or scoop out as much as I can. Doesn't matter if there's a little bit in there, but I don't want too much in there. Let's try the other container. Oh, there it is. No wonder it wasn't on the rack. It was next to the rack. Try again. I just thought it did look a bit wrong, and it did look wrong. It's just had a little shininess to it. So baking bicarb soda is your fluffy stuff. If you put it with an acid, it grows bubbles. Baking powder is crema tartar, which is a stabilizer, and the bicarb. So it kind of does a rise, but not as crazy as that. Hello, Raylene. Lovely to see you on today. All right, salt to finish off. Remember to add that salt so that it cuts through the flour flavor. All right, 1 teaspoon. And we're nearly done. So I cook this differently. So let's bring this together. And I rise it, actually, 5 minutes. I'm not going to talk. I'm going to say, come back on YouTube tonight to see how to finish this. You can go step by step through the recipe and do what they tell you to do. To me, it's a bit over the top and not required. Okay, the very quick summary for those of you, in case you want to cook this today, because I know, hello Leanne, I know some of you guys cook this like straight away the day I do it, as I do it. So if you want to do that, I use this as my mold, okay? I don't use it as a cake tin, because it will actually overflow in the oven. It makes more than this. But remember yesterday I made the standard loaf in this. If I make a loaf in here, it's a bit too squatty. It's not high enough and it doesn't look like big square bread, okay? So I haven't quite found a tin that's perfect for this yet, and you really can't make this sizing bigger. It just won't work, okay? So what I do is I put it in here and I put my mat on it and I rise it. And I'm going to show you guys on YouTube in a second how to do this. So just stick around. Those of you on Facebook, you have to watch tonight's YouTube. All right. So I rise it, and then when it's risen, I bring it back inside. I use my gluten-free flour. I flour one of my oven mats, and I flip this onto it. Then I dust the top if it needs a bit of flour, and I put some sourdough slits into it and make it look like a sourdough. and then I cook it. And I spray with a little bit of water first. That makes it nice and crispy on top. And I cook it as per this instructions for the time it says, which off the top of my head, I cannot remember. It's in the recipe. Okay, so if it's, let's just say it's 180 for 50 minutes. It could be 200 for 45. Go look at the recipe, okay? Or watch tonight's YouTube. So that's what I do to make it a little different and to finish it a bit differently. So those of you who want to cook it today, you now know how I do that. Those of you who are going to see me on YouTube shortly, we'll do it together. So I'm going to spin this up to knead. I'm going to come back to you in a second, show you the texture we're looking for, put it in there and rise it, and I'll take you through that process. So we'll see you soon. Okay, welcome back. It's done. So let's grab our little cake container. You'll notice with anything gluten-free, it's incredibly sticky. That is normal, okay? Don't try and thicken it up. It just doesn't work. So this is going to go straight into this oiled, and I put coconut oil, melted coconut oil in the bottom of this because I want it to slide out later. So once this is proven, I really don't want to work it hard or if at all once it's actually proven. So I want it to just slide on out for me. It'll be so fluffy. You can see at the moment it is that cake texture that I spoke of earlier. You can see how it's holding its shape in there. And it is incredibly sticky. Don't leave this stuff lying around. Clean up your bowl straight away. Put it straight on a dough clean because otherwise it just gets concreted in. Okay. So, alrighty. This goes. Great one to fill the freezer with. Once it's cool, you can slice it up and put it in the freezer. Great recipe for cob loaf. You can make individual bread rolls with it. If you're making bread rolls, you want wet hands. Wet hands make this so much easier to work with. It feels a little slimy. That will be the arrowroot flour in the gluten-free mix. Totally normal, but yeah, wet hands. So anything that's tacky and slimy, use water, okay? Extra flour doesn't work overly great, although we will put flour on the top of this so that it doesn't stay attached to my thermomat when it's proving. Okay, I want it to come off and I want to turn it upside down onto that. So you see how at the moment it's all lumpy and bumpy. Okay, so using my spatula, pushing it down so it's in the corner. Now you can see as well how little space there is for this to grow if I was to try and cook it in here. I've only made that mistake once where I've tried to cook it in here and it just explodes out the top. It ends up everywhere through the oven. It wasn't here, it was actually at my other house before we moved. So you definitely cannot do all the mix in here, but I find that next size up, it's just too squatty. It doesn't get a nice square loaf if I was to do it that way. So I much prefer to freeform this, but freeform it in a way where people can still get a slice, not like circular where you end up with somebody at the end who gets that little bit at the end. So that'll get cleaned up in a second. A little bit of a dusting on the top. By the way, this is the silicone loaf from the mix shop. I think it's still something that you're able to get. It's been a long time since I've looked for it, but I think it's there in the mix shop. Remember, if you are going shopping in the mix shop too, make sure you're signed into your MyMix rewards or sign up if you're not already a member there, because you get points for dollars spent. And if you haven't signed up, you're going to get that $15 to start off with, which is nice. So I'm just floured the top and I'm just giving it a little push down. Just because again, I've made the mistake. I've wrapped it in the oven mat, the thermomat, sorry. And then you come to take it off later and it's attached. And then you lose the top and you'll see later on when we come together how much bigger this is going to be. It's going to be nicely risen out of the top of this. So I'll come back to you in about an hour's time and we'll have a look at this before it goes in the oven. So we'll see you then. Okay, welcome back. The kids just brought this in. They were about to hang out the washing for the day and they were like, Mom, it's huge. So I thought I'd show you. Look at that. So as you can see, if I try to cook that off in the oven, you can see how it would just overflow out everywhere, right? Like it's just going to become, because it grows even further still in the oven. So what I've got down here is I've got just one of the rose gold trays. I've dusted it with flour. Bring it out. And we have very gently turn this upside down. We do not want to lose the air out of this. We'll try and go this way so I can show you. And this is how I do it. You don't have to do it this way. You could do it in a bread tin, as I've mentioned. You could do it as per their recipe. I don't think I've ever made it as per their recipe. So I'm just gently squeezing this to hopefully drop it out. It had coconut oil, so in theory, it should just pop out. Here he comes. Hopefully. There we go. So there you go. Now what we want to do is get some more flour. And we're just going to smooth out the top a little bit. Okay. I must have a little bit too much oil. It looks a little greasy, but that's okay. The flour will kind of sop it up and we'll shape it at this point as well. Maybe I've just overproven it. It's so, oh, what's the word? It reminds me of jelly. It just got that jelly feel. Okay. A little bit more flour. You do want to be super careful. You don't want to knock the air out at this point in time. So push it down. If you don't want the edges like super square, push it down a little bit. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is take my blade that I use on my sourdough and just going to put some slits into it. Okay, so I'm just going to go straight across there about 1/2 centimeter deep. Okay. Picking up some in the middle. Just remove the dough if you get any on your blade that sticks. Oh, as it kind of drags. See there? Sometimes covering your blade in some oil will help that. Okay, there we go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to give it a little spray with some water. That helps us get a nice crust on it. And it's going in the oven. And the recipe says, let's have a look, recipe details. We're going in the oven for 160 degrees, 40 to 50 minutes. All right. If you've got a sensor, you can put a sensor into it, and when it gets to about 98 degrees, you know you are done. But it should sound, if you don't, hollow when tapped. Okay. Transfer to a wire rack, cool completely before serving in slices. So cooling it means it is fluffier later. If you cut it while it's hot, that the little air bubbles are all connected inside and you end up with a drier inside loaf. But I will come back to you later and I will show you this before I cut it. So give this recipe a go. It's amazing. As I said, you can use it for so many different things. Pizza, bread rolls, cold loaves. It's just amazing. We like it like this because everybody gets a slice. As opposed to often, like even the original recipe, it's quite like circular. Somebody gets those small ones, right? So at least like this, there's only 2 ends. Anyway, we'll see you soon. Okay, welcome back. It's time for the big reveal. It's out of the oven. It's pretty much cool. It's a little warm still, but not hot. But it's also about to be eaten, so I'm not too worried about cutting it early. So let's see if it's cooked all the way through. So let's get the end off. Oh, look at that. Oh my goodness. Got the bread knife from the Thermomix mix shop. I've also got the folding bamboo. And that is perfect. Check that out. Look, I'll just give you guys a big view too. Perfect. All right, that is it. That is the artisan gluten-free loaf. The swap of cashews, the taken out of the sparkling mineral water or whatever it was. Real ingredients. You know what's in it. I suppose the gluten-free flour. Questionable, but you know, like mostly you know what's in it. How cool is that? So, and soft, fluffy, like look at it. How cool is that? So there you go. That is your gluten-free loaf done my way. I hope you give this a go. When you do, let me know what you think. I'd love to know what you think about this recipe. It's amazing, and as I said, use it in different ways. It doesn't just have to be a loaf of bread or like this. It can be those other things as well. Remember to share this video with friends and family who have a Thermomix and they need to know how easy it is to make gluten-free bread. Okay, guys? You don't need to buy it. You do not need to buy that stale, hard bread. You can make it as you need it. It can be frozen. You can make it into smaller loaves, all those sorts of things as well. If you've got questions, reach out. I'd love to hear from you. But otherwise, take care, and I will see you in the next video soon. Bye for now.